When I bought the house in Salem, Massachusetts, I told myself it was a new start, a quiet town, a quiet street, and a home that had been waiting for someone to bring it back to life. I'd just come out of a messy breakup and a stressful job I couldn't stand anymore. So when the realtor told me the two-story house on Mariners Lane was available for less than half its value, I didn't hesitate. I signed the papers the same day, loaded my boxes into a rented van, and drove north from Boston with the kind of naive optimism that only comes before something goes terribly wrong. The house stood at the end of the lane, surrounded by tall trees that blocked most of the sunlight. It looked tired, like it had been holding its breath for years. The paint had peeled away in long strips. The front porch sagged slightly and the windows stared out blankly like hollow eyes. Still, it was mine. The first night was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that rings in your ears. I sat on the living room floor with a pizza box and a beer, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I remember thinking that peace felt strange, almost wrong, but I blamed the city life I'd left behind. I should have known better. It began with small things. The sound of footsteps upstairs when I was sure I was alone. The faint smell of something burning in the middle of the night. Doors that creaked open on their own, though I could swear I'd locked them shut. One morning I found muddy footprints on the hallway floor, too small to be mine. They led from the back door straight to the basement stairs. That's when I decided to explore the basement properly. It was colder than the rest of the house, even with the heating on. The light bulb flickered when I pulled the chain, illuminating the cracked concrete floor and a set of old shelves covered in dust. And then I saw it, a thin seam in the wall near the back, like a line where two pieces of drywall didn't quite meet. I leaned closer. The wall sounded hollow when I tapped it. I fetched a hammer from my toolbox and gave it a solid hit. The panel cracked, revealing a sliver of dark wood behind it. I cleared the plaster away until I was staring at what looked like a door, sealed shut, with no handle or hinges. Something about it made my stomach turn. The wood wasn't just dark, it was almost black, and when I touched it, it felt warm. I took a photo on my phone, but when I checked it, the door wasn't there, just smooth concrete. That was the first night I didn't sleep. Around 3:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind coming through the cracks in the window, but it wasn't outside. It was inside the house. The voice was low, almost a murmur, coming from the floor vent near my bed. I leaned down and listened. It said my name just once, slowly, carefully, like someone testing how it felt on their tongue. I froze. My mind was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't move. The whisper came again, a little clearer this time. Don't go back down there. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I didn't know whether to be terrified or thankful that it didn't tell me to do something worse. When I finally got up, the clock still read 3:17. I tried calling my friend Daniel, but there was no signal, just static. In the morning, I told myself it had been a dream. But when I went downstairs, I found the basement door slightly open and muddy footprints leading out. By the third week, I was desperate to understand what I'd gotten myself into. I went into town, to a small diner where everyone seemed to know everyone else. When I mentioned my address to the waitress, her smile faded. "You bought that place?" she asked quietly. "You mean the Holloway house?" I nodded, confused. An old man sitting a few stools down turned slowly toward me. His eyes were pale, cloudy, but sharp in a way that made my stomach twist. "That house doesn't forget," he said. "Not what it saw, not what it did." I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head. "Sometimes the house remembers better than the people do. That's why no one stays there long." I tried to laugh it off. But when I got home, I couldn't stop replaying his words in my mind. That night, I dreamed of the door, but this time it was open. In the dream, I walked through the door and found myself standing in a corridor that looked like my basement, but longer, endless. The walls pulsed faintly, like they were alive. I heard footsteps behind me and turned. It was me, same clothes, same face, but his eyes were darker, his smile sharper. He looked at me and whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." When I woke up, my hands were covered in dust, the same kind that coated the basement floor, and the door, the one I'd broken open, was now perfectly sealed again. A few nights later, my phone rang. The screen said unknown. It was 3:17 a.m. I answered it without thinking. At first, there was only static. Then a voice, low, trembling, whispered, "Get out." I tried to ask who it was, but the line went dead. I checked the call log, no record of the number. When I looked up, I saw movement in the reflection of the window. Someone standing just behind me. I spun around, nothing. But on the fogged glass, I could see the outline of a handprint, smaller than mine. I decided to call Daniel for help. He arrived 2 days later, skeptical but willing. We went down to the basement together, tools in hand. The wall was intact again, but we could both feel it. A faint vibration behind the plaster, like a heartbeat. We broke through the wall completely this time. Behind it was a room, small, square, lined with old wallpaper that had nearly peeled away. There was a single wooden chair in the middle, and on it a tape recorder. Daniel pressed play. A man's voice crackled through. "If you're hearing this," it said, "then it's already too late." There was a pause. Then a sound, like someone dragging chains across the floor. Daniel hit stop. "This is a joke," he said, though his voice shook. But when we turned toward the door, it was gone. We were trapped. The air grew colder. The walls began to shift, bending inwards as though the room were breathing. I heard whispers all around us, hundreds of voices layered together, calling our names, begging to be let out. Daniel slammed his fists against the wall until it cracked. And suddenly we fell, not through the wall, but through the floor. We landed in the same basement we'd started in, except it wasn't ours. The shelves were full of dusty objects, toys, old letters, photographs. And on every photo, the faces had been scratched out. We left that night. I didn't even take my clothes. Daniel drove us straight to Boston, and I swore I'd never go back. But last week I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo of me, standing in the doorway of the house, smiling. The date printed on the back was 3 days in the future, and at the bottom, written in neat handwriting, were 3 words, "Welcome back home." Last night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. No number again. I didn't answer it this time, but when I looked toward my bedroom door, I saw something move in the dark, a figure, same height, same face, same clothes. It smiled, and then I realized the reflection in the mirror behind it was me, still lying in bed. The other me turned toward the wall, whispered something I couldn't hear, and walked straight through it. The next morning, there was a knock at my apartment door. A delivery man stood there with a package. No return name, no sender info. I opened it. Inside was a single dusty doorknob. And when I touched it, it was warm. When I finally left that house behind, I thought I'd escaped the curse of remembering. But memories have a strange way of following you. They cling, they echo, they twist into new shapes when you least expect it. For months, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard whispers. Not from that house, but from somewhere else entirely. And then, one night, I read a story online. A man's story. Someone who had gone through something eerily similar. At first I thought he was lying. Then I saw the photo attached to the post. He was standing in front of a motel sign, smiling, and behind him, in the window of room 13, I swear I saw my own face staring back. That's when I realized it doesn't matter where you go. Some places find you. When I checked into the Pine Hollow Motel just outside Asheville, North Carolina, I wasn't planning on staying more than one night. The highway rain had been relentless, and I was exhausted from driving. The neon sign buzzed through the storm, half the letters flickering, so it only read Pine Hall Motel. It looked like every other roadside motel I'd ever seen. Tired, lonely, and a little too quiet, but I didn't have the energy to keep going. The manager was an older woman with gray hair tied in a bun, and hands that trembled slightly when she handed me the keys. "You can take room 13 if you—" "Don't mind the noise," she said. Softly, I asked what kind of noise. She just smiled faintly. "Old pipes." Nothing more, she lied. Room 13 smelled like damp carpet and cheap detergent. The wallpaper peeled near the ceiling, and a faint buzzing came from the overhead light. Still, it was warm, and after 12 hours of driving, that was enough. I showered, changed, and collapsed on the bed. The storm outside was violent, thunder rolling across the hills, wind rattling the windows. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of a radio, static, then faint music. 1950s maybe. Something that didn't belong in this century. I checked my phone, but the noise wasn't coming from there. It was coming from the bathroom. The light was off, but the door was half open. The sound grew clearer the closer I got. A man's voice, low and crackly, saying something over and over. "Check out before dawn." I flipped the light switch. The sound stopped instantly. No radio, no speaker, just silence, and a fogged mirror with words traced across it by an unseen hand. He didn't. The next morning, I went to the front desk to ask about the room. The manager wasn't there, just a young guy refilling the coffee pot. When I mentioned room 13, he froze. We don't usually rent that one," he said carefully. "Why not?" He hesitated, then muttered, "People say it's unlucky." I laughed it off. But his eyes said he wasn't joking. That night, the power went out around 2 a.m. The storm had returned, shaking the walls. I lit the small candle I'd brought and set it on the nightstand. The shadows danced across the room. Then, from the corner near the window, I heard the faintest sound, like a door creaking open. But there was no door there, just the wall. I turned toward it, and the wallpaper began to peel on its own, slowly, like invisible fingers were pulling it back. Underneath, words had been scratched into the plaster. "He's still in here." The next morning, I drove into town to clear my head. At a diner, I asked the waitress if she'd ever heard of the Pine Hollow Motel. Her face paled. "You stayed there?" she whispered. "Yeah, why?" She leaned in. "About 10 years ago, a man killed himself in room 13. Said the voices in the radio told him to. The owner sealed the room for years. Thought it was cursed. I felt the air leave my lungs. Then why is it open again?" She shook her head. "New management. They probably don't know the story." When I got back to the motel that evening, the manager was waiting outside my door. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. "You should leave," she said quietly. "I already paid for another night." She hesitated. "Then promise me you won't turn on the TV." At midnight, the power flickered again. The TV turned itself on, static, loud and sharp. Before I could grab the remote, an image flashed. A room just like mine, but older, dirtier. A man sat on the bed, his face buried in his hands. The date stamp on the corner read 2014-06-13. Then the man looked up, straight at the camera, straight at me. His eyes were hollow, and he whispered, "He's behind you." The screen went black. I didn't move for nearly a minute. When I finally turned around, there was nothing. But on the TV screen's reflection, I saw a figure standing right behind me. I packed my bags before sunrise. But when I opened the door, the hallway didn't look the same. It stretched on, longer than it should have been, lined with identical doors that had never been there before. Each door had a number: 12, 13, 14, 15, all glowing faintly in the dark. The air was heavy, thick like water. I picked a direction and ran. After what felt like hours, I came to another door marked 13. Something in me, curiosity, fear, I don't know what, made me open it. Inside was the same room. My suitcase, my jacket, the candle still burning on the nightstand, but the bed was occupied. Someone was lying there, curled up, still, facing the wall. I stepped closer. The person turned. It was me, eyes open, mouth slightly parted, whispering in my own voice, "Check out before dawn." I ran. I don't even remember how I got out. But suddenly I was outside in the rain, barefoot, the motel's neon sign flickering overhead. The manager was gone. The office was empty. My car keys were on the front desk, waiting for me. When I finally got onto the highway, I didn't look back, but halfway through the drive, my radio, which had been silent the whole trip, crackled to life. A faint voice came through the speakers. It said my name, then softly whispered, "Room 13 is ready." The car's engine died. All the lights on the dashboard went out except one. The clock, it read 3:17 a.m. I don't remember how I got home. Sometimes I think I never did, because every night since then, when the world goes quiet, I still hear that radio, and if I ever turn it off, the whispers move closer, so I keep it on. Always. You know what's strange? Every time the music fades, a voice at the end of the broadcast says the same thing: "Next guest arriving soon." If you made it through both stories, you've earned the right to never sleep in silence again. Tell me, which one haunted you more, the house that remembered me or room 13? Your comment might be the next story we tell. And don't forget to subscribe to the Red Flag Report, where fear finds its way home every single week.